Hey everyone, welcome back to Paddles Up. My name is Nevan McCabe, and today we are going to be talking about a very important topic, which is injury prevention in the sport of dragon boat. Now, it is very important before we start to give a video idea credit to Andy Fung, who is a member of the Colorado dragon boat community. He saw our first video and had some recommendations about things that we want to talk to you all about and make sure that you are paddling safely. First in this video, we are going to introduce the idea of injury prevention in dragon boat, talk about some specific injuries which dragon boaters will see. And then after that, we're going to talk about a concept called stacking and how you can implement that into your own dragon boat training. And finally, we'll end off with some tips and tricks that you can use while you're with your team or on your own in order to make sure that you're implementing these rules and paddling safely. To begin with, in any sport that you participate in, it's important to look into injury prevention. When we're talking about dragon boats specifically, paddlers leave themselves prone to upper body injuries that can end up compounding over time. Specifically, one of those injuries that we're looking at is damage to the stabilizing muscles of the rotator cuff and the scapula, which, if are put under strain while doing the paddling movement, can end up damaging and breaking down over time. So to begin with and introduce this idea of stacking, what we are talking about is the idea that as you reach out of the boat and you get ready to do your stroke, you're going to set up with your inside hand, your outside hand, and your shoulders in essentially a straight line over the outside of the boat. From here, we're going to get a little bit more technical, and I'm going to use some terms that you may not be familiar with. The first of those terms is the gunnel. Now, when we refer to the gunnel, all that we are talking about is the side of the boat. And for all of our purposes, we're going to be reaching outside of the gunnel as we make our stroke. Now, this topic becomes important because it's easy to injure yourself if you're keeping your hand too far outside the gunnel as you go through your stroke. Now, for a couple reasons, this is also going to take away from the power of your stroke, and it's going to start bringing your boat yawing to one side as opposed to moving straight forward. But on top of that, as you can see, if I set up for my stroke, I want to make sure that my arms and my shoulders are directly in line with the gunnel of the boat and just outside of the line where the boat is going to end. Now, if you're using a Concept 2 machine like we are, this could be a little bit more difficult, but one trick that you can use is to set up a piece of tape along the floor next to the side of your Concept 2 to act as the gunnel of your boat. Now, as I was saying, as you set up, you want to make sure that you're perfectly right outside it. One thing that a lot of new paddlers will do is bring their stroke too far out. Now you can see that as I bring my outside hand too far away from the boat, I'm opening up my scapula, and this is leaving me prone to injury as I exert force downward. Now what this can do is strain the muscles of that rotator cuff and my stabilizing muscles of the scapula, and this is going to lead to injury over time with repeated use. Great. Well, now that we've introduced the idea of stacking and what it means for you as a paddler, we want to talk about a few tips and tricks that you can use in your own practice in order to make sure that you're implementing this and staying safe. If you look over at my setup, if I go from my neutral position up to my setup position, I'm going to think about a few different things to make sure that I'm stacking correctly. One of those first things is whether or not I'm in a straight line with all of my upper body points of contact. The biggest thing you can use to checkpoint this is whether or not your inside shoulder is behind your ear. Ideally, as we go up, I want to make sure that my inside shoulder is stacked directly behind my ear, and this will put me into a good position to stay in a perfect plane with the gunnel of the boat. Another important thing to think about as you go to set up and to implement this idea of stacking is whether or not your top hand is in line with your bottom hand. Now, as long as you're doing this and making sure that we make a perfect in-plane line with our two hands, this is going to prevent you from pitching your hand out far too much. You can see that as long as I'm considering whether or not my hands are in straight movement, there's no way that I can move outside of the boat and cause that unnecessary force and unnecessary strain. Again, in order to put that all back together, what we'll do is bring it up. And as I'm here, I'm thinking, is my inside shoulder behind my ear? And are my two hands stacked on top of each other? This also becomes very important when considering the concept of rotating to get through your stroke as opposed to bending forward. Now you can see what a lot of new paddlers tend to do is as they go for their setup, they'll keep their body perfectly straight, and in order to get the reach that they need, they'll lean forward and create this really negative angle with their back. The problem with that, though, is first off that it can strain the muscles of your lower back, which is another injury prevention thing we can talk about in a future video. And on top of that, you can see that I'm stretching my arm out much further and putting my scapula and my stabilizing muscles in that exact same position that we're achieving if I just go too far outside the boat. For this reason and a few others, it's very important that as you set up and as you rotate, all you're doing is rotating your body so that you get your back to the outside of the boat and your chest on the inside of the boat. This will make sure that you can't overexert those stabilizing muscles, and will make sure that you keep in line with the gunnel at the same time. As always, we are a brand new channel, and we are so excited to have you along with us for this journey. Please, if you have any comments for us, any suggestions, we'd love to hear them in the comment box below. Please hit that subscribe button and the bell notification, and we'd love to see you in the next video.